The maintenance request was one line. I filed it the way I filed everything in those years, methodically, without expectation. Station Verath-Null had been operating at reduced capacity for so long that reduced capacity had simply become capacity. The atmospheric recyclers on the lower ring were cycling at 61%. The docking array's guidance transponder had been dark for 8 months. 2 of our 4 fabrication bays were sealed behind decompression doors that no longer responded to command input. We had 43 ORVATHI on station, station keepers, archivists, a pair of system engineers older than the seals on those decompression doors, and we had been managing. That is the word I keep returning to. Managing. It is a word that means surviving without admitting you are only surviving. I am TTHAL-ORVENE, Station Administrator, 3rd Classification, assigned to Verath-Null under the terms of the Outer Reach Maintenance Charter. I have kept this station since before the recyclers began their slow decline. I know every sound the hull makes when the temperature differential shifts between cycle night and cycle day. I know which corridors smell of oxidized seal compound and which smell of nothing at all, which is worse. I know that archivist SOVETH wears an extra thermal layer now, because the heat distribution in the archive wing no longer reliably reaches his section. And I know he has not mentioned it because mentioning it would mean acknowledging what we all already know. We are a WAYSTATION, the main lanes bypassed 17 years ago when the ORETH compact rerouted its primary corridor traffic through the inner systems. We are, technically, still operational. We still appear on the navigation charts as a listed service point. But in 17 years, the number of vessels that have called at Verath-Null for anything beyond a brief fuel stop can be counted on both of my upper hands. So when I filed the maintenance request, I filed it as I filed all the others. I noted the recycler degradation. I noted the guidance transponder failure. I noted the decompression door anomaly and the fabrication bay closures. I noted the current crew complement and the estimated operational window at present trajectory. I put that figure at 11 months, which I believe was accurate within a margin of 3 weeks either direction. I routed the request through the Outer Reach Maintenance Consortium, marked it routine priority, and I waited. I had filed 14 such requests before this one. 7 had received automated acknowledgement. 4 had received a human-generated reply indicating that the matter was under review. 3 had received nothing at all. None had resulted in a service call. I did not expect this one to be different. What arrived 42 days later was not what I expected. I was in the operations center when the proximity alert sounded. A tone I had not heard outside of scheduled drill cycles in so long that my first instinct was to assume a sensor malfunction. SOVETH appeared in the doorway behind me, his extra thermal layer bunched at the collar, and we both looked at the display board together without speaking. 3 vessels, inbound on the Outer Reach transit heading. Transponders registering as Earth Defense Fleet Auxiliary Support, a medical frigate, a mid-frame engineering tender, and an escort vessel I later learned was designated for the run as a routine precaution, because the transit corridor passed through an area with a documented debris hazard rating. I read the manifest that came through on the approach channel 3 times before I trusted my own translation matrix. The medical frigate carried a 12-person trauma and general care team with a full pharmacy unit, enough consumable medical stock for 60 residents for 2 standard years, and diagnostic equipment I had not seen outside of catalog listings for inner system installations. The engineering tender carried a crew of 8, a replacement atmospheric recycler module rated for twice our station's volume, fabrication bay restoration components, a guidance transponder array described as current generation, and what the manifest listed simply as miscellaneous structural assessment tooling, a category that I discovered covered approximately 14 crates of materials, I had not thought to include in any of my 14 requests, because I had not thought anyone would bother. The escort frigate carried standard crew, and the manifest noted 2 spare fabrication bay control units in the cargo hold, because the engineering tender's crew lead had pulled our station's prior service record during transit and calculated a high probability that the existing units had corroded beyond RECALIBRATION. I stood in the operations center and I read this manifest for the 3rd time, and I thought, we asked for maintenance. We asked for a recycler technician and a transponder check. We asked for someone to look at the decompression doors. I had written 1 line. The request had taken me less than 4 minutes to compose. I had not included our full operational history because I had learned, over 14 requests, that including it did not change the outcome. I had not described what it looked like to watch PAVETH reroute the archive wing's secondary climate loop through the fabrication bay exhaust ducting, because the standard loop had degraded past reliable function. I had filed 1 line, the minimum required to keep the request in the active queue rather than having it auto-purge as abandoned. They sent 3 ships. The medical frigate docked first. I was at the airlock to receive them, which I recognized was a slight breach of standard protocol. Administrators do not typically meet inbound service vessels, but I did not know what else to do. The team lead was a human woman named Cordell. She was shorter than I had expected, which is not a useful observation, but it is the one I have. She looked at me the way a person looks at something they are trying to assess quickly, and then she said, "We got your report. We thought we should come ourselves." I said, "You sent 3 ships." She said, "The recycler situation and the fabricator closures together indicated a compounding failure risk. It made more sense to address everything in 1 run." I said nothing after that. I was not certain what to say. In 17 years, no one from the consortium had used the word compounding. No one had pulled our failure history and calculated a compound risk. No one had added a spare fabrication control unit to a cargo hold because the math suggested we would need one. They worked for 9 days. I will not catalog everything they did because the catalog is long and because the record will reflect it more accurately than I can. I will say that on the 4th day, the lower ring recyclers came back to full capacity for the first time since I have been stationed here. And the change in the air quality was something Archivist Soveth and I noticed simultaneously from different parts of the station. I will say that on the 7th day, the guidance transponder came online, and the approach corridor lit up on our display board in a way it had not in 8 months. An engineer second Paveth, who had been with us since the rerouting, stood in the operations center and did not speak for a long time. On the 9th day, they left. No ceremony. Cordell filed her close-out report through the consortium system, marked the service call complete, and the 3 vessels undocked in sequence and held briefly at station distance while their navigation plots were confirmed, and then they were gone. The operations center was quiet. I sat at the station console and looked at the display board, all systems nominal, the recycler bars green across every ring, the transponder pulsing its regular sweep out into the corridor, and I tried to compose the acknowledgement notice that standard protocol required me to send within 48 hours of service completion. I wrote it 4 times before I sent it. The first 3 drafts ran long. I kept adding things that did not belong in a formal acknowledgement. I kept trying to put into administrative language something that administrative language was not built to carry. In the end, I sent 8 words. Service completed, all systems restored, no outstanding deficiencies noted. Cordell replied 6 hours later from transit. Her message was 3 words. Safe skis, Tethel. I have been a station administrator for 22 years. I have filed maintenance requests in that time totaling, by my count, 41 separate submissions across 3 postings. None of them before this one had ever been answered with a person's name. I printed Cordell's reply and I put it inside the cover of the maintenance log, where I can see it when I open the file. I do not know why I did this. It is not standard record-keeping practice. But Verath-Null is a station that keeps records. We are archivists and station keepers, and we log what we witness. What I witnessed was 3 ships arriving when I had asked for nothing more than a technician. What I witnessed was 9 days of quiet, competent work, done without complaint, in a station at the end of a corridor that the main lanes had bypassed 17 years ago and never come back for. What I witnessed was being answered, not processed, not queued and reviewed and acknowledged and deferred. Answered by people who read the numbers, pulled the history, ran the calculations, loaded the spare parts and came. That is what I have written here. That is the record.